Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine. This is a tea called White Blossom. It's, I believe, from a company called Miss Tea, but now I'm kind of blanking if that's for real or not. Um, but I'll try to remember to put that in the description box if it isn't, in fact, that. Um, this is just nice because it's a very nice little flowery, slight bits of fruits. I think even some cocoa, maybe a slight bit in here, but it's also white tea, which I'm trying to drink more of. It's supposed to be really good for you. I don't know, and not as much caffeine, which is probably good for me as well. But one of the reasons I chose it actually is because the thought of blossoms makes me think of spring, and I don't want to rush life at all. But I do really miss that kind of temperate weather. I love spring and autumn, and I kind of wish you know, the years had a little more spring and autumn than anything else. It's a bit cold in New York right now. And one of the things I love to do in that time period, which I can't do as much this time of year, is take my crazy long walks. And one of the things I like to do in my crazy long walks is go to bookshops, which I can still do now, but even recently, the last time I went to a bookshop, the heat was on so much that with the coat and everything, it was not as good. Anyway, this is just a tie-in with the read about books in January thing that I'm doing. It's a little bit of an event, but not, just a little understated event. And thank you for those who are participating in it. Really appreciate it. But I thought I'd talk today about books about bookshops. And some of these books are, almost primarily about bookshops, and some are mostly about bookshops, and some are somewhere in between. But this is not an exhaustive list, probably not even amongst my own collection. But these are books that I've read, and the first one I'm going to show you, I read a while ago, so I don't remember a lot about it, to be honest, but I remember liking it for the most part. But yeah, so these are just some books that you could pick up if you're interested in reading about bookshops. I am usually because, well, I just like books about books in general, books about libraries, books about writers. But bookshops I like because I've always sort of fantasized about working in a bookshop. Although I think when I say fantasize, I really mean fantasy. It's not the kind of bookshop that is realistic, and not the kind of work that probably really goes into working in a bookshop. So sometimes it's good to read about what actually happens at a bookshop, so you know both the good, rewarding parts and the not so great parts. So it is a good thing. These are all nonfiction. It's a good thing to know a little bit about the ins and outs. A lot of the books that I want to recommend are not books that I own, books that I've taken out of the library, ironically, sort of. I have bought books about libraries in bookshops too, so we're even. But anyway, let's get started with this little list. And if you have any other ones that I haven't mentioned, I might have read it, but feel free to talk about books that you really enjoyed about bookshops in the comments below, because I think everybody likes a good suggestion. And I'm sorry, I'm a little nasal. I have a cold. I could say it's an actual cold and it's not the other thing because I was tested. And on that note, The Yellow Lighted Bookshop, a memoir, a history by Louis Busby. I think that's his name, Busby, which is a great name, by the way, and also kind of a springy sounding name, right? Busby. I hope it's not like Boosby or something, Buzzba or something. And I'm like, I'm not even pronouncing his name right. But anyway, I have somewhere a postcard. I gotta look for it. That is similar looking to this bit of art with all the books and with like a light on top of it. That is to me perfect. I wonder if it says who did this. No, it just says cover design, but it doesn't really say Quint. But I'm not gonna try to pronounce anything anymore. But anyway, it's really pretty, and this is just what it says here. He used to be a bookseller, so he knows a little bit about working in bookshops, but he also talks about his love of books and a little bit about what past bookshops were like and the business behind that. And it is not a very long book. Let me see. It's a let's see how many pages exactly. 216. Although I think 216. That's not a big book. So if you want just a quick cozy read, this is a pretty good one, and I love the size of this. I really do. I love when a book just has that kind of holdability. So sorry I didn't say more about what goes into that book, but I read it like over a decade ago and really should read it again. But yeah, I remember liking it. So now we're going to go to 3 books I have by one writer. Oops, I picked the wrong book here. I have everything out of order because that is what we do in life. But this is the So Far collection of books by Sean Bithell, which apparently is how you pronounce his name. Lately, I've heard his name pronounced Bithell, which, fine. um, so this is a person who works in a bookshop in Scotland in a book town. The book town that I hear about the most is Hay on Wye, and of course Sixpence House by Paul Collins is also a great book, which I just read recently. And that's about Booktown, which is definitely about bookshops. Um, but this is a different book town in Scotland, and this is somebody who actually owns and works constantly, although he does take days off, at a bookshop in this town. It's probably the biggest one, and I think it's just called the Bookshop. I think that's what it's called. Um, and I really want to visit it one day. In it's Wigtown. Wigtown? Is that right? Wigtown, Scotland. You know, I doubt myself every time. But yeah, it. He's a bit of a curmudgeonly type of person, which is sort of what you want in a bookseller. Sort of, as long as they're not mean. There's a difference between being a little bit cranky, a little bit, whatever, but really loving books. This man really does love books, and I think in general likes his job. So I'm trying to remember, I think this one came first, The Diary of a Bookseller. And of course there's a bookshop cat, which is something I love. My most local bookshop has a dog. Not there every day, but bookshop dog, which is great too. But I like a cat. And so this is The Diary of a Bookseller, and then Confessions of a Bookseller, which are basically the same thing, just day-to-day record of what's going on. A diary. Today we had this many sales, and today I went to this person's house to pick up their books that they're getting rid of, and we had this encounter. Today this person came in and said this when we were in the bookshop. This customer said this ridiculous thing, to which I responded, etc. And then there's different book events, and you see both the pleasant parts about having a bookshop and the real difficulties sometimes. At certain times of year, he gets almost no business. The difficulties of both working with Amazon and also having trouble with that arrangement, because some booksellers do that too. Literally the day-to-day life of one type of bookshop. And it's a used bookshop, so it's probably different than maybe a bookshop where you just get all new books, but it's still a viable business and actually something that I really enjoy. This is a book that I also got by the same writer, and it's the same theme, except it's not the same format. So this is 7 Kinds of People You Find in Bookshops. It's a really kind of small book. I actually ordered it from Blackwell's, which is a bookshop in Oxford, just because they have free shipping. And I just like the fact that I'm supporting a bookshop when I do this. And I do recommend that for people in the United States, if you want to get a hold of a book that came out in the UK, maybe hasn't come out in the United States yet, and you really want to get a hold of it. Book Depository is great too. I think, though, they're related to Amazon, which I don't have trouble ordering from Amazon sometimes. I really don't. But if you have, then it's good to know that. But Blackwell has very similar prices, so give that a shot one day. So there's different types of customers, and it's the conspiracy theorist, the exhausted parents, the whistler, the dark artist, the loiterer without intent, the craft enthusiast, and the bore, and many more. It's really actually not a mean-spirited book. It's mostly humorous. This is not someone who hates their customers. I don't think you could 100% hate your customers and still run a successful at all business, or a business that lasts within 6 months. You'd be done. But one has a lot of time to observe people, and I just thought it was a good, quick, fun read, and I do recommend it. I just love the art on these books too, right? I mean, look at that, all these different people on books, and of course another cat or two. Good times. All right. Kind of not related to it, but someone who actually I believe knows Sean Bethel as well, and has had a number of books about books or bookshops. But this is the one I particularly own. The weird things that customers say in bookshops is hilarious, and if you can get a hold of that, I really recommend. But what I have is the Bookshop book by Jen Campbell. And Jen Campbell is also very well known on BookTube. She's a writer and a booktuber and very knowledgeable about books, and also writes other books for kids and stuff. Um, so yeah, I probably don't have to tell you to check out her channel because you probably already do. But in case you haven't heard, there it is. Look at that. The first page I opened up to shows a picture of the bookshop. Isn't that great? So this book takes you on a world tour of different lands and some of the best bookshops there. There are a number of bookshops in here that I've been to, mostly in New York and the UK, but not all, sadly. But I think all the ones in New York I've been to. At least I hope so, because that would be sad if I hadn't. Come on. Which is not to say I haven't been. I've been to every bookshop in New York City, I should say, but I'm trying. Anyway, but it is a really good guide. I think I actually took it with me on a trip to London, even though I don't know why. But it's really great because even if you haven't been to these bookshops, you do get a feel for them and something to look forward to if you're ever in that area, if you're ever in that country, if you're ever in that city, state, what have you. It just describes what kind of bookshop it is and why it's such a great bookshop. The only thing that is sad about it is that it's not brand new, this book, so there are some in here that do not exist anymore. That's like when you write a book about tea shops in different places. You know eventually it will be outdated. Still good. I think even if this book was picked up like 20 years from now, it would still be fun to read, even knowing of past ones. Here is one that is very tabbed for a reason, and kind of similar but not. This is A Book Lover's Guide to New York by Cleo Latan, I guess, and drawings by Pierre Latan, okay? Which I've had for a couple of years now. Had it before the pandemic, and I had all these plans to visit all the places, and I don't think I have. This is all the places I believe that I haven't been to yet. So it was my goal to reach all these places. So this is not specifically just about bookshops. There's a lot of places here that are events that are, literature related events like poetry readings in different places that are not necessarily bookshops. But almost, if not all, almost all the locations here are bookshops. And, well, I don't like to say almost all. Many of the locations here are bookshops. And the fact that I still have things tabbed means that I have my work cut out for me. But I should actually go through this book again and make sure that there haven't been a couple places that I have visited since, and maybe I just need to take that tab out. But it's all in New York. I don't know if it's just New York City. It might be, but I could be wrong about that. So I'm going to peruse it really quick. I see Manhattan and I see Queens. Yeah, I think it's just New York City. I know that can be annoying to people who are New Yorkers and live outside of New York City, but anyway, it is just a fun, if you're going to be visiting New York at any time and you just love bookish destinations, I definitely recommend this book. And it's just a fun book to page through, thumb through, page through, index finger through, pinky out. All right. Last but not least, another great concept for a bookshop. This is a memoir, and it's called The Bookshop That Floated Away by Sarah Henshaw. So this is an actual person who bought an actual book barge, like these boats that you can float or keep docked if you want in certain canals. And she decides to get this boat and fill it up with books and just take it to different spots all over England and just drop off. I think she might have had a Twitter account that told people when she would be showing up so people could come and have a look. I'm not 100% sure if I'm getting that mixed up with Word on the Water, which definitely had that, which is another floating bookshop in London, which now, as far as I know, has a permanent docking. At least it has had the same space for almost, or maybe more than 6 years. But it's the same deal. It is just a floating bookshop. There is nothing more you could say about that, but the story, a lot of what the story really gets into is the semantics of moving it, especially when she's by herself. because you have to open these locks. A lot of things that take a lot of physical work, which she is sometimes up to and sometimes not as much. So there are some struggles involved. And sometimes just the dealing with different people that come to visit, mostly positive experiences. I kind of enjoy the idea of her sometimes doing a bit of a swap or a bit of a deal. Instead of always just buying books with money, some people would bring Victoria sponge cake, which is one of my favorite cakes. It's also called Victoria sandwich anyway, which is a very, very nice cake. And so when she would talk about it, I would really start getting cravings. And now I'm getting those cravings now, but I'll move on. And I think that this bookshop is currently in France. I think that she moved it out to France, but during this time, it was probably a good 10 years ago, during right around like the recession time. So not a great time to start a business, but it's a fun story. It goes into different tangents, which I like because I go into different tangents, but it is just another type of selling books experience. I think that, I don't have much experience on waters at all. I could barely row a boat in Lake at Central Park. But I like the idea of it, and so living vicariously through other people. So that's just a small listing here of books, ideas for you if you want to read about different bookshops or what it's like to work in a bookshop or various other reasons you might want to read these books. So again, like I said before, if you recently maybe read a book about a bookshop, or if you have a bookshop near you that you love, that you would kind of wish that there was a book about it, and not just a reference to it in one book, but like an actual book about it, let me know, because I love to hear about people's bookshops, and any way that they have of accessing books is fantastic to hear about. So that is all for now. This is Catherine, taking tea with Catherine. Catherine, I can't say my own first name. Have a lovely tea and bookshop filled day. Bye.